Good evening. Schools, like many other institutions, have their own types of policies, which are known as zero-tolerance policies. Anna Fuentes' Opposing Viewpoints in Context article, Zero Tolerance is a Harmful School Policy for Teens, states that the term zero tolerance was first coined during the 1980s. At the time, America under President Ronald Reagan was fighting the war on drugs. In 1986, Congress passed the Drug-Free Schools and Communities Act, which mandated zero-tolerance policies for drugs at schools. But zero-tolerance policies would ultimately fight against school violence. In 1994, Congress passed the Safe and Gun-Free Schools Act, which mandated one-year expulsions for students who brought guns to school. Despite these acts, there have been several acts of school violence in the past 20 years. Since Columbine, fear of school violence has urged schools to strengthen their zero-tolerance policies by including virtually all aspects of student behavior. However, these policies tend to go too far. I want to persuade you that the zero-tolerance policies should be revised. We will discuss how schools tend to misuse them, how they make schools seem like prisons, and what other alternatives exist for these policies. First, let's talk about how schools misuse their zero-tolerance policies. The policies can be put to good use by not allowing firearms or drugs inside schools. They can also be used to fight against bullying, which has been an issue for several years. However, schools tend to use their zero-tolerance policies where they are unnecessary. For example, according to Aaron Ferris-Rosen's Congressional Quarterly article, School Discipline, in February 2014, 15-year-old Dontadrian Bruce of Olive Branch, Missouri, held up 2 fingers and a thumb in his school photo. That gesture was considered a gang sign which violated his school's discipline code, and Bruce was suspended for 21 days. DeSoto County Associate Superintendent Van Alexander stated, "We're looking at possible revisions for the upcoming school year, but safety still has to be the #1 priority. It just has to be. These policies should be revised to be less strict, but the revisions should still focus on the more troubling behavior at school, such as violence, bullying, and drug use." Now that we've discussed how zero-tolerance policies can be misused, let's talk about how they make schools seem like prisons. Zero-tolerance policies should be revised because the current policies can make schools seem like prisons to many people. According to Randall G. Sheldon's Opposing Viewpoints in Context article, Zero-Tolerance Laws Are Unfair, a report pointed out that most U.S. high school students will have to walk by numerous hidden cameras, outdoors and indoors, and go through an institutional-sized metal detector manned by guards just to get into school each morning. Once there, students are subject to random searches of their bodies and their belongings. Lockers can be searched without warning, with or without the student present, and in many places, police will use drug-sniffing dogs during raids, where they search lockers and even students' parked cars. Many high school students nationwide have to cope with these prison-like conditions almost every day because the zero-tolerance policies at their school have resulted in some very strict precautions meant to prevent another school shooting, among other things. Zero-tolerance policies should be revised by making them more lenient. Admittedly, having security guards on campus is a good idea. In fact, according to the School Discipline article, President Obama has since pushed for the inclusion of security officers in more schools nationwide. However, the guards should not always search people whenever they walk into the building, since those actions are what makes schools seem like prisons. Now that we've discussed how zero-tolerance policies can turn schools into prisons, let's discuss what other alternatives exist for them. Zero-tolerance policies should be revised because there are other alternatives to these strict policies. There have been several acts which are meant to make schools safer. For example, according to the School Discipline article, there is the No Child Left Behind Act, which mandates that states identify persistently dangerous schools. Many schools have also experimented with more non-violent, but more expensive, alternatives. These alternatives include anti-bullying programs, behavior counseling, early intervention, and conflict resolution. A 2014 study by 26 researchers revealed that schools that introduce these alternatives have seen an improved sense of safety and less suspensions. Therefore, the alternatives to the strict policies we have now are another reason that zero-tolerance policies should be revised. Today, we talked about why zero-tolerance policies should be revised. We have discussed how schools can misuse their policies by suspending students wrongfully. We have observed how the policies can make schools feel like prisons. Finally, we have mentioned other alternatives to these policies. While we should still keep acts of violence as far away from the school environment as possible, the zero-tolerance policies should still be revised to be more lenient and less strict. The revisions to the policies could make students feel safer at school. Have a great day.